In Module 7, we have continued our discussion on social relations, and we've started focusing in on aggression. So to start off, we ask the question of what is aggression? Aggression is defined as the behavior that is intended to harm another individual, according to our textbook. Even though there are lots of ways one can define aggression, this is the one that we've decided to focus in on. So there are many ways that one can be aggressive, including words that they use, deeds, spreading rumors, and even the failure to act can be aggressive. It all comes back to the definition and the part where it says the intent to harm another person. There are also other behaviors such as violence, which is the extreme act of aggression, anger, the strong feelings of displeasure in response to a perceived injury, and hostility, a negative antagonistic attitude toward another person, which some of these will be discussed later. One of the major forms of aggression is bullying. Bullying is a form of aggression that actually affects children all over the world. Bullying is a global problem with an average of 32% of children being bullied across 38 countries or regions. It is said that when looking at the statistics of how many children are bullied, there's a low end that says about 5 to 10%, but there's also the high end of 70 to 90%. And with this day and age, another common problem with bullying is cyberbullying, which is the online version of bullying, and that, I believe, is making it hard to kind of really detect. And when you observe anything, it's really hard to know if your presence is going to affect the situation. In one of the articles, it is stated that negative parenting behavior is also related to a moderate increase of risk for becoming a bully or a victim and small to moderate effects on victim status at school. So it does have a play in, let's say, a parent is aggressive, or just the parent's behavior could influence the aggression or the attitudes of children, and more on the influences of aggression will be discussed later. Another thing that social psychologists look at when looking at aggression is culture and aggression. This is one of the main things that when looking at aggression, it varies when you look at how much people aggress against each other. The United States has one of the highest murder rates in politically stable industrialized nations, even with the recent decrease in rates of violent crime. This can be seen as a show of how we have the prevalence of guns in our country. This also can be seen in other countries such as Central and South America, the Caribbean, and Southern and Middle Africa, because the murder rates there tend to be higher because these cultures have factors such as poverty, drug trafficking, availability of guns, political and social unrest that influence these trends. Another thing that has to do with culture is the idea of individualistic cultures versus collectivistic cultures. So the individualistic cultures are less concerned with social harmony and the avoidance of open conflict, and are most likely to have a relatively high rate of aggression. It is said that the more someone sees themselves as independent from others, the more likely they are to report being aggressive in consumer interactions. And although this is true for individualistic cultures, it does not mean collectivist cultures don't have aggression. There are other factors that influence all these cultures into being aggressive, and we'll talk more about that later. There's also the frustration-aggression hypothesis, which is the idea that frustration always elicits the motive to aggress, and aggression is caused by frustration. It is claimed that the motive to aggress is a psychological drive that resembles psychological drives like hunger. And basically, it means that the people who are frustrated will be more aggressive, and they're more likely to act out and really show their aggressive side when they're frustrated, like at the end of a long day and they had a bad day at work and they're driving and having road rage. It's more likely to happen because of the fact that they had a bad day. While if someone had a good day and somebody cut them off in traffic, they're more likely not to act as aggressive. So basically, if you add any kind of stressor or just anything that would cause frustration could lead to the influence of aggression. So when we talk about the origins of aggression and any other emotion or situation in psychology, a lot of the psychologists will bring up nurture versus nature and make it a debate of which one is the biggest influence on our lives. And I think our book in this chapter really helps show that it shouldn't be a nature versus nurture as much as a nature and nurture help influence and show us who we are in the social world. And so it is said in our book that it's a little bit of both, and that there's definitely some nature, which I will get into later about the origins when it comes to our genes and things like that. While also we learn behaviors by watching and we imitate things, and that's the nurture part. And so aggression really comes from nature and nurture. The origins of aggression also comes from genes, hormones, and the brain. So there's, of course, always biological factors that play roles in any kind of behavior, but especially human aggression. There's the role of testosterone, that although men and women both have this, the males usually have more higher levels, and that can lead to the more aggressive behavior that we talked about before when it comes to the influences and how gender plays an influence on that. It also talks about how genes might have an influence, and the origins of aggressive behaviors can come even from our genes in studies that they've done. There's also another biological factor that is serotonin, and it appears to work like a braking mechanism to restrain impulsive reactive acts of aggression. So when people don't have that much serotonin, it is associated with higher levels of aggression. And so drugs that boost serotonin can dampen aggressiveness and also the impulsiveness that happens. So really all of these hormones and the brain functioning all have a direct origin and direct relation with the aggression shown by people. So as I said before, the nature versus nurture should be an and, so it should be nature and nurture. And in the sense of, we already talked about our genes, so we already talked about nature, and so now I want to talk about nurture in the sense of, is aggression learned? In the book, it discusses positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. It defines positive reinforcement as when aggression produces desired outcomes, and negative reinforcement when aggression prevents or stops undesirable outcomes. Both of these things have to do with how we react to aggression, and in the sense of a child, let's say, as the example in our book gives, if that child will learn aggression by the reward and or punishment that they receive. An example that was given in the book is if a kid hits another child and receives the toy, that is a positive reinforcement for aggression and will likely hit again. While if a child hits another child and is given a punishment, the child is less likely to hit again because of the punishment. So the rewards are when it comes into the learned behavior. Because when we are seeing that aggressive behavior comes with positivity, it is more likely to occur. One of the things I find interesting in this is when you talk about media, which I'll talk about later also, but when people see that these violent behaviors and this aggressive behavior is causing all of this stir and is positive, I always wonder if they didn't focus on the negatives and then focus on the aggression and make the person, the aggressor or the person who did the violent crime, if they didn't make them so, like, if they didn't make them almost a celebrity, if the crime rate would go down because of the fact of positive reinforcement. People see, oh, if I do this act, I will get the attention that I want, or I will become famous, and things like that I find very interesting when it comes to learned aggression and also the copycat method of with aggressive behaviors. Another thing is a social learning theory, which goes with the aggression learned idea, because the social learning theory is defined by Andreas Schneider as people learn by observation and imitation. So if we go back to the child example, a child would see a person hit another person, and they see, oh, that person got what they wanted because they were violent. It makes sense to hit, and they learn this aggressive behavior by observation, and they then go and copy it later in life. This can also be seen in the example I gave with the media of people learn by looking at these people, saying, oh, they're getting all this attention that I want, and maybe if I imitate this, I will get the attention that I crave. So things like this can be sometimes positive if you see something that's a good behavior, but with aggression, mostly positive reinforcement and the social learning theory really show that people will copy, and it is a nurture kind of world out there that we are influenced by.